Hi everybody. So what I'm going to go through today is actually uh, the dashboard that I've created for the mini challenge 2. So for in this dashboard, this is actually a main page that you are looking at now. Uh, so we have to analyze the mini challenge 2. We actually there are two main analyses, which is actually the comparison across time, as well as the comparison with standardized water quality criteria. For the comparison across time, we actually do a comparison across years, or we actually do a comparison across months. While for the standardized water quality criteria, we compare it with the US national government guidelines with reference to their continuous concentration criterion as well as the maximum concentration criterion. Let's move on to the by years. The chart on the left actually shows the percentage yearly change of the average value across years. A bright green indicates that it is actually a sharp percentage increase from the previous year, while a bright red indicates that it's a sharp percentage decrease from previous year. If you actually click on any of the measure, you can see that the graph on the right changes. So what the graph on the right actually represent now is the value of the measure over time by the different locations. There's a dotted gray line over here which represents the trend line from the first year the measure was sampled to the last year where a value was found. If you actually click any of the locations, you can see that the graph on the left actually changes. It actually changes to what the percentage yearly change of average value in that location. So in this case, it's actually in that chart. At the top right hand corner, you can see a button to go back to the main page. Moving on to by months. For by months, it's actually quite similar to by years, in which the graph on the top actually represents the percentage change compared to previous year. So a bright green actually represents a sharp increase, while a bright red represents a sharp decrease. The value over here actually represents the average value. Oh, sorry, let me correct myself. It's actually the percentage change from the month before. So for example, in February, for AGOC-3A, there's a sharp decrease compared to the average value across all Januaries. So if we actually click the one of the measures, you can actually look deeper into it, in which the graph on the bottom actually shows how the measure have changed in different years across different months. Same thing as the by yearly change. If you click the location, the graph on the top actually changes to represent the location that you have selected. Now we will go back to main and take a look at the comparison with standardized water quality criteria. So let's look at the continuous concentration criterion first. The graph, the figure on the left actually represents a comparison with US National Recommended Water Quality Criterion based on the continuous concentration criterion. So the blue boxes represents that the measure is either below the threshold of that recommended by the US national government, or it is not a measure that the US national government use as a guideline. While on the other hand, orange, yellow means that it's actually above the threshold. If you actually click the small boxes, or you can actually click the measures itself, the the graph on the right actually changes. Yeah, the graph on the right actually changes, So what this is showing now is the value of the measures that you have selected by the different locations where samples were taken. The reference line is actually the continuous concentration criteria, which means that any anything above the reference lines means that they have exceeded the threshold that is recommended by the US national government. So it's important to note that for recency's sake, we only take into account the previous 5 years, year 2012 to 2016. Let's look at the maximum concentration criterion. Similarly, the graph on the left, orange box means that it's actually above the recommended water quality criterion. And then blue means that it's either lower than it or is not measures that is measured by the US national government as a guideline. And if you actually click the measure, the graph on the right actually changes, and then the graph actually shows how the value of the measures that you have chosen varies over time by location. In this case, in this time case, it's actually in terms of month years. So for the example of zinc, you can see that DECHA most of the time is actually above the maximum concentration criterion ever since 2012. Even for those times in which it is actually below the maximum concentration criterion, it's actually still very close to the threshold. I've now come to the end of the explanation of the dashboard that I've created for Mini Challenge 2. Hope you guys have a nice day. Thank you very much.